Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of UmmahSpeaks. Today we are joined by two amazing guests, Hisham and Abdirahman. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
I'll go first. Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Hisham. I am a first year kinesiology student at Western, and I am an associate director for the Brothers Socials Committee.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Abdirahman. I'm in third year kinesiology, so just a bit older than Hisham, and I'm the VP Bros for MSA, alhamdulillah.
Okay. How's it going this year so far?
Not too bad.
Studying wise?
We had, MSA wise, we had like a rough start in terms of socials, just because like USC, etc. But alhamdulillah, we get the ball rolling. We actually have a skating event this Sunday, so inshallah, hope to see everyone there. Although it's not going to come up by then, but and in terms of school, alhamdulillah, not too bad. Third year is, first semester was good, just have to continue the work to second semester, so alhamdulillah.
Hisham, what about you? How are you finding the MSA?
MSA is great so far, alhamdulillah. We had a lot of successful events, such as the Burger Factory event, which was really nice, and the previous skating event. In terms of school-wise, university is really hard compared to high school. But alhamdulillah, I managed to survive first semester, and inshallah I'll do better second semester.
Inshallah. I think today we're talking about a bit of a touchy subject, if you want to say. We might have all been exposed to it, we might have not. But I think it's a very important subject to talk about. And it's about combating Islamophobia and Islamophobia in general. As you guys know, I'm not sure if you guys saw the post on the MSA Instagram last week. I think it was on the 29th, January 29th. It was the National Day of Action Against Islamophobia. And I think they posted that in remembrance of the 6-year anniversary of the Muslims who were murdered in the Quebec mosque. And how do you guys feel during that time? How does that affect you on your day-to-day basis, knowing that things like that can happen and there are people out there to seek us out as Muslims?
So Islamophobia, I think, affects all Muslims, no one is singled out. I'd say it's mostly towards the women, since they represent Islam in a much obvious way. The Quebec shooting did affect all of us in a way where we don't feel as safe as we did before that happened. And I remember when something similar happened in New Zealand, they did get a lot of security at the LMM mosque, and there was a lot of surveillance happening, which made it seem awkward that why in a place of worship I should feel scared and not comfortable to be here praying and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Besides that, it's really sad to see how nothing is stopping actions like this. And subhanAllah, 6 years after that, something else happened here in London, which is what happened on June 16th. That also affected all of us really hard.
June 6th,
June 6th, my bad. That did really affect all of us, and there has been a lot of organizations which I'm part of as well, and we're trying to combat these incidents in multiple ways. But at first, we all need to start by learning about Islam and learning about the politics of this country, and learning about a bunch of different things to help educate others how to take a stand for themselves and help combat such a thing.
Yeah, no, I think, Hisham touched on a lot of points there. In my own personal experience, so going back to when New Zealand happened as well as Quebec, around 2017, I was 15 or 14 years old, so I remember it vaguely. But subhanAllah, I was in the masjid, or used to go to the masjid every day, to where it's you kind of just show up the next day, and it's if that can happen to someone in Quebec, why can't it happen to us? And I remember LMM actually upping their surveillance and making that precaution, because subhanAllah, people, like Hisham said, come to a place of worship to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to have the threat and the worry of being killed for what they believe in is very scary. So yeah, definitely it's something that shouldn't happen. And subhanAllah, I think for all of us, over the years, you kind of get exposed to a lot of different disasters that happen around the world, to where you kind of get desensitized to it. So I think it's important to kind of step back and really understand that this is something that shouldn't be allowed. And I know we see a lot of bad things that happen in the world, but we always need to advocate for it. So yeah, inshallah khair, I think we're trying our best to combat Islamophobia within Canada, I think also on the global aspect. So yeah, alhamdulillah.
How was it like during the? Do you guys remember when the Hyde Park accident happened, where the whole which was insane to me, like the 3 generations of a family were murdered: the grandma, the wife and husband, and the 15-year-old daughter. There is only a 9-year-old orphan remaining. Was it tense in London? How were situations like in the mosque and university?
No, you can go.
No, I was going to say that, so it was June 6th, 2021. I finished my first year of university. I would say though, it was a lot different only because it was during COVID, and like a lot of people were at home, or the masjids weren't as open as much, or if it was, there was Jum'ahs, but it'd be very spaced out. So subhanAllah, I think for me anyways, growing up, I was always around the masjid, to where when COVID hit, it was very different because it felt like you were distant away from the masjid. In terms of London, it just felt, it didn't feel real, right? That subhanAllah, you see a lot of these things happen around the world, but you never expect it to happen to one of your community, your people, right? So it was definitely a kind of a wake up call, and it was wow, subhanAllah. And the next day they had the vigil outside the masjid. All the politicians came, etc., and it was very beautiful to us to see that people acknowledge what happened and said this can't happen. And even during COVID, people had masks. It was very hot, but they all showed out. Around I think 10,000 people came out to the masjid to support that this cannot happen in Canada. So yeah, I think definitely it was a shock for the community.
Just to add on to what Abdi said, so yeah, it was a really, really tense moment here in London, especially. A lot of questions came onto my mind when I heard about the news. One of them was what happened to the kid? How the kid is now left alone and he's really young, and what triggered someone to do such a thing, even though there wasn't a lot of other incidents occurring outside of that time. I just wanted to know what was the cause for all this. And and even the guy who did run them over, he was a really young guy, what made him choose to do this and end his life that soon, rather than pursuing other things in his life. So, yeah, I'd say it was a really tense moment. And what was beautiful is that we saw a lot of support from other religions and other people, that they do not condone such a thing, and they stand with us no matter what. And it was really nice to see how everyone advocated for the accident that happened.
SubhanAllah, and I don't know, I wasn't in London at that time, but I even heard about it. I got the chance to grow up in Kuwait, where it was a all-Muslim country, and I never really had much exposure to Islamophobia, but I managed to hear about this incident all the way there, which was pretty interesting, alhamdulillah, I think we can get past it and keep on growing as a community, and even as Muslims, to just get past this incident. You guys know, I know the kid that is an orphan. Sorry, his cousin, my cousin's is his friend. He lives in a place near here, 2 hours away, which is really heartbreaking. But I don't know, nasib Allah yarhamhum to the family that died. Anyways, I just wanted to talk about have you guys experienced Islamophobia? Any incident you can pinpoint, any place that you experience more people looking at you, people judging you. Have you guys had that? Me personally, honestly, since I grew up in Kuwait, I didn't have that much of exposure to Islamophobia specifically. I don't know if I want to call it Islamophobia, but these weird looks, these I don't know. Have you guys had that?
So my past was similar to yours. I lived in Saudi for 12 years, but when I came here, and I just had a recent incident that happened actually. So I was driving out of downtown.
I remember this.
Yeah, I was driving normally, nothing like I wasn't speeding or cutting off anyone or doing any of that. And then just out of nowhere, I see a guy with a big truck just coming after me, hiding me, honking all the time. And I'm like, what's wrong with this guy? I didn't even do anything to him. And he just came out of nowhere. And he just stayed really close on my behind my car. He was like tailing me the whole time. And then I just hear him yelling from his window, "Go back to your country," and he's like cursing and saying the F word. And then he comes and pulls up next to me, he puts down his window, he's like, "Go back to your country, you don't belong here," and all that. And to be honest, I don't even look Arab or Muslim, which is a bad thing, but I don't know, like, why would he do such a thing when I didn't even do anything to him. And I kept going, he was behind me all the time, and he even went on the opposite road to keep following me. So I just had to take like a detour to whatever place I was going, and then I called the guys, telling them what happened, and we just met up together, and he just ran off when he heard the police coming. But it was really sad to see something like this happen out of nowhere.
Rahman?
Yeah, no, that's funny enough. I actually remember we were at Sherry's, and I was at Abood, and like we were just driving back to NWN where we were going. And we get a call from Hisham, like telling us the story, and like subhanAllah, like although it's very unfortunate, it's not something that's like rare in Canada, and it's sad to say that you get discriminated and hate towards just because you look different from someone else. So yeah, I remember it very clearly. Alhamdulillah, Hisham's still here and he's fine.
Yeah, it was hard for me to really like keep my cool and ignore him as if nothing happened. But alhamdulillah, I managed to do that. Even though it really does trigger anyone who faces such a situation.
In my own personal experience, so I was born in Mississauga. I moved to London when I was 5 months, and I've lived in London ever since. So although I was born in Mississauga, like London's been home. The sisters get in terms of Islamophobia, because they're obviously the like symbols of Islam. I would say if I actually have in my lifetime I haven't faced a lot of Islamophobia. Why though? Because obviously I'm not clearly Muslim. Like if you looked at me, like the first obvious thing is I'm black. So if I were to get any hate, it would be because race, because of my race. Because I am black, people have prejudices. Have microaggression towards me, or be macroaggression. Alhamdulillah, I haven't faced anything too crazy because I am black or Muslim, for that matter of fact. But obviously, Islamophobia and racism still exists. Probably some small things here and there. The only other thing I could predict maybe is when I apply to jobs, for example. If people see the name Abdirahman, and it might turn me away for that sense. But alhamdulillah, in my experience, I haven't had many occurrences in terms of Islamophobia or racism. But yeah, I think the sisters get it a lot more just because they have the symbol of Islam every day, and people obviously see that, and they choose to do horrendous things like Islamophobic attacks.
That's definitely true. Like my sister is a hijabi. She's and like it's extremely noticeable to see like people staring at you. Not in Mississauga because it's full of Arabs. Maybe a little bit more in London, but definitely in like there's a place called Bruce County. It's like literally all white people, no Muslims at all, and it's extremely like obvious that they're looking. I'm not sure if it's a look of ignorance, hate, misinformation, not knowing why why she has the hijab or any of the sisters have the hijab. I'm honestly not sure, but like that's the most thing that I noticed that's like prevalent in my day-to-day life. But in general, I think in Canada, like Islamophobia obviously has its place, but in many other countries around the world, China, in many European countries, I definitely think Islamophobia is definitely much more prevalent there. Have you guys heard of the Uyghur Muslims?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're being placed in concentration camps, having their basic human rights taken away, which I think is not fair to anyone, not just Muslims in general. Okay, so do you guys have any specific moment or topic you want to talk about that's going on in the world that is targeting Muslims. Like we know we have a lot of different subjects, different places. Europe, the Uyghurs. Do you guys have any other examples?
Yeah, I was going to mention that recently there's a lot of news about India as well. Muslims in India have been getting a lot of attacks, and one of the things I saw was they're taking down mosques in India right now, which is really sad to see how no one is standing up for that. And it's really severe in India as well, not only in China. And I'm sure there's a lot of places who also receive such accidents.
Yeah, no, subhanAllah, I saw it on Instagram. They were bulldozing a masjid, even though they weren't, I think, legally allowed to do so. But they just did it anyways. We'll break it down. So yeah, subhanAllah, just kind of just to see like people like tend to walk over, or try to walk all over Muslims. Yeah, you also mentioned Europe. So this is actually funny story. My good friend Ned, if he ends up watching this, he'll actually enjoy it. But so we were sitting. This is when we went to RIS. So RIS is like December 23rd to 25th. It's a weekend long. And you know, like a bunch of guys. And basically, I wouldn't say I'm like the most social guy. Anyways, I don't like go out of my way to like meet people. Assalamu alaikum, whatever. But we were sitting down on a table, and another brother from France actually joined us at the table, and Nader was talking to him, and he was telling us about how he was in France, living in France, with his sister and his mom, and they faced so much Islamophobia that they actually ended up moving to Montreal, just because obviously they speak French and they wanted to stay in a French place. So they moved to Montreal, and subhanAllah, we met him there, and he was just telling us about how bad it was in Europe and how there's so much hate towards Muslim for no reason. You know, we don't obviously, we as Muslims, we don't spread hate. We don't. We're told not to oppress people, etc., etc. And to be oppressed, right? So we have to move and make hijrah to a different country. SubhanAllah, is crazy. And then also another thing, you mentioned the Uyghurs. So I'm actually in a class 3362. It's called Olympic Issues, and one of the issues we were talking about in class was basically how they held the Beijing 2022 Olympics. I think maybe 2022 or 2020. It was like during COVID. They were supposed to run it, or maybe they ran it. I don't know exactly, but they were basically, you know, trying to tell the IOC, which is the Inner Olympic Committee, we shouldn't be running Olympics in China because we can't turn a blind eye to what's happening to the Uyghurs and there's other tribes, I think, or places. So then the IOC turned a blind eye to it and said, no, we're going to Beijing. Anyways, they had a vote and the vote passed. So they had the Olympics in Beijing. SubhanAllah, and then they tried, the people obviously trying to advocate against it, like to not have the Olympics at Beijing because of what the Chinese government is doing to the Uyghurs. And they tried putting on the athletes and saying, oh, the athletes should go and, you know, try to boycott this because how are we going to turn a blind eye to the government killing people, oppressing people just because they are Muslim, right? So I think that's also another case. But yeah, there's a lot of Islamophobia throughout the world to kind of just reflect upon. And yeah.
I think we can also talk about the man in Sweden who burnt multiple copies of the Quran on multiple occasions as well. Once near the Turkish embassy and another time near a mosque in front of the people while he was under the protection of the police, which is insane that a country can allow that to happen, but it's fine. We can also talk about the brothers and sisters in Palestine, what they're facing on a daily basis, what they've been facing for decades now, we could say. Do you guys have any comments on that?
Yeah, so going back to the Olympics thing, we can also see how in the Olympics, when any athlete, mostly like the Muslim athletes, when they go against an Israeli opponent, they decide to boycott the match and not face them, which also relates to what happened in the World Cup in Qatar, and how we saw a lot of people advocate for what's happening in Palestine, and they felt free and comfortable to do such a thing, and how Qatar just let that be, which is something that makes us all proud.
You know, subhanAllah, like Islamophobia, it's really interesting that it comes in many forms. Not only oppression, not only like taking people's rights away, but also comes in like systemic Islamophobia as well. Like in Canada, we've seen multiple occasions of people having been like injustice done to them because of like their religion, which is Islam. We can talk about the guy, the person who ran over the family. He still hasn't been prosecuted. Imagine, up until this day. He's gonna be prosecuted September, which has been almost a year and a half now. That's pretty insane to think about. Like such a urgent matter that can create such division in the country isn't being dealt with as quick as possible. Let's move on to another like aspect of Islamophobia, and I just have a question. What do you guys think fuels Islamophobia? What's the reason behind it? Why are people Islamophobic?
What's the question again?
So what fuels Islamophobia? Why are people Islamophobic? So if you want, I can start. Like in my opinion, Islamophobia is definitely fueled by misinformation, ignorance, all that type of stuff. Because people sometimes they're Islamophobic, not because they just hate on anyone, just because they don't know what the hijab represents or what Ramadan represents or all that type of stuff, and why we crowd up their streets, for example, when we're in during Taraweeh or during Qiyam al-Layl. So they might be hateful to us, not knowing why we do the things we do on a daily basis, on Ramadan, whatever it is.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So all I gotta say is haters hate, bro. I'm just kidding. No, it's not. It might be because a lot of different reasons. So some people might get offended with what we do. You never know why. And it might be ignorance, as you just said. And they just don't know about our religion. And they just see that it's spreading really fast and spreading massively. So they might think that, oh, this is affecting us. No, they can't take over. No, they can't do this. So it just might be triggering for a lot of people. For example, 9/11 could have been a cause, how they maybe they use that as a way to get revenge on us. And the mistake in that is that you can't blame one's action on a whole population. Doesn't mean that if a Muslim guy did something bad, all Muslims are bad. Because we don't view Christians or Jews or any other religion of like that same way. Like if a Christian, for example, did something bad, we don't say all Christians are bad. No, because not all Christians are the same.
Exactly.
If a Jew did something bad, we don't say all Jews are bad, because not all Jews are the same. And the same thing should be applied to us as Muslims. So yeah, it could be from a lot of different reasons.
So I think for myself, when you ask that question, I think two things come to mind. I think first, Western media controls the narrative. So oftentimes people consume media, whether it be social media, the news, online, YouTube, etc., whatever those platforms may be, and they usually control the media. So whenever you see these attacks, for example, and if a Canadian or white person were to do the same attack, it would be caused or due to a mental illness, etc. Whereas when a Muslim and by the way, like the statistics, it's very low for like Muslims to even like commit these acts of terror. But and obviously that's 9/11 fueling that narrative. But when you have a Muslim person, let's per se, does an act of terror or aggression towards someone, they take it out of proportion. They, like Hisham said, they apply it to the whole population, or they'll say a terrorist, etc. So why it's a double standard. And I think the second thing is that obviously 9/11 happened, and people have been consuming, whether it's in schools, all Muslims are bad, etc. These teachers throughout these schooling systems over the years, to where you build these prejudicial biases that people are not even aware of, right? So whether it be in like their personal life, or their school advice, their friends, etc., to where you have these biases that are built up over time, and the person's unaware of it, to where when they see a Muslim person, for example, they feel that they have a sense of hatred towards it. And if you are not aware of those biases and actively trying to get rid of those biases, then you're just reinforcing them to where it becomes greater and greater, right? So example being the attack on in Quebec, right? It was I'm not gonna say his name, but it was a Canadian brother, right? And he grew up in Canada, and he obviously went through the system, and he went through like the schooling system, his family, etc. So how does one person get from the point of where they're born in Canada, they're through the schooling system, their family, etc., all the way to committing a mass murder, and looking at the different factors that influence that and how that person can, because there is something personal, some prejudicial bias that is underlying that it was never combated when it was very small, to where it got very big, to where he felt the need to kill people over it. So yeah, I think those are the two factors that affect.
Yeah, and something that makes me just reflect upon is that if they keep blaming these oppressors as people who have mental issues or have some mental disease, then it must have been like a lack of knowledge of their upbringing that caused them to do such a thing. Because I'm very sure that if someone does actually like have just basic knowledge of who a Muslim is, what they stand for, what their religion is, I don't think they would do such a thing or have anything that triggers them to have hate towards these people, other than having just an incident that happened directly with a Muslim and he oppressed you, and then you're trying to take revenge, so then you go and attack them. But yeah, I think it's just lack of knowledge, which means that here in Canada we should start by educating people about what Islam is at the beginning, so they can understand who we are.
That's good. I definitely do agree that the Western media plays, like, it has a lot of propaganda in it, which definitely affects not only just the Western people, it also affects people all around the world, because Western media is the main source of media everyone uses. So they definitely have a grip on what they see and what happens and what gets portrayed as well. Now, we identified the problem or the cause of Islamophobia. What do you guys think you can do on a personal level to combat Islamophobia? I'll go first. Like, for example, I think reposting it's pretty simple, but reposting like stories on Instagram, sharing different aspects of Islam, stories, what it means to be a Muslim, like all that type of stuff. Because I know a lot of people like watch stories because they're concise, short. We can share them to educate other people. I think I definitely do lack in that department sometimes, because I think it can get overwhelming to know that you as a person is responsible for the information you portray and being a Muslim, like the image people see of you. Because as we said again, if we link one person to an act of an organization or a community, that's wrong, but there are a lot of people who do that, which is unfortunate. How about you guys? What do you think?
I'd say the first thing a Muslim should do is you will learn about your religion as much as you can, because Islam is a very beautiful religion if you really know it, and for you to really understand your religion you have to know it. And when you have enough knowledge to go and teach others about what Islam is, for example, if you have any non-Muslim friends, to go and educate them, you do need the knowledge. You have a saying in Arabic that goes, فَاقِدُ الشَّيْءِ لَا يُعْطِيهِ. If you don't have something, then you can't give it to people. So if you don't have enough knowledge to educate someone, then how are you going to give that knowledge and pass it around? So the first thing we should do, us as Muslims, we have to educate ourselves about what Islam is at the beginning and how we can portray it in the best way possible to non-Muslims for them to understand who we are and what our identity is and what we stand for. So as I was saying, the more you dig into Islam, the more beautiful it gets. And subhanAllah, the knowledge of Islam never ends. It never ends, because there is always development happening in life. So there's always more knowledge to look for and pursue. And as the question you asked, what keeps me going? So to get back to that, it's just like learning more about Islam. That's what keeps me going, and seeing how beautiful of a religion it is. And slowly, once you start implementing it, you will see the impact of it and how people will start to like you for who you are and look up to you, and how much influence you're going to have on everyone around you.
Abdirahman?
SubhanAllah, very, very good question. Just giving it some thought, I think what keeps me going is there's a certain ayah in the Quran. قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Right? So it says, do not despair. To summarize, I'm going to paraphrase, but don't despair the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think that's the beauty of Islam, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most compassionate, the most merciful. And I think, just knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is, it supersedes His anger. You can cut that out. But just knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how merciful He is, and how forgiving He is, I think it's something that keeps me going. Just because, even if you mess up in life or something knocks you down, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there for you, and you can turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and raise your hands, talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I think, it's a reoccurring theme, especially in the Quran as well. Every surah in the Quran, it starts Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, except Tawbah, right? One surah. So I think that's very important to recognize, because you see the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I think that's one thing that keeps me going.
I think another ayah that we can also mention in this topic is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He told the angels that I'm going to send a Khalifa to this earth. And what basically a Khalifa is someone who carries on a legacy or pursue his religion. So we're all Khulafa, since we're all Banu Adam. We all have to take our religion and pursue it, implement it, live by it. It has to be our set of rules, our set of guidelines that we have to go by. And subhanAllah, the more you follow your religion, the better your life gets, and everything will just go smoothly in your life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test you here and there, but of course, part of your religion is to persevere and have patience, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for that, inshallah.
Okay, I just have one last question. It's do you guys have any ayat to share with us that portray on how we need to persevere against Islamophobia, or in general how we can keep up and keep on going even when times get tough and hard?
So one ayah that comes to mind is actually funny. There's a backstory behind it, but I found it on Instagram. It's from Islamophobia, and they were talking about how the situation in Europe of how the burning of the Quran, and they mentioned this ayah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يريدون أن يطفئوا نور الله بأفواههم ويأبى الله إلا أن يتم نوره ولو كره الكافرون. So that means they want to extinguish the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with their mouths, but Allah refuses except to perfect His light, although the disbelievers like it. So yeah, that pertains to the burning the Quran. People, they think that just because they burn the Quran, the Quran's gone. If we were to throw all the books of all the religions into the ocean, and this is something else I saw on Instagram, but subhanAllah, it's the haqq of Islam. It's that so many people have memorized the Quran to where it's not only preserved written, it's preserved orally, right? So you could bring people that have actually memorized the book word for word, and they can come back together and put the book as if it was never, as if you never even threw it into the ocean. So subhanAllah, people want to get rid of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and try to fight Islam, but they can't extinguish the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I think it's a beautiful ayah to kind of reflect upon and see that not only is the Quran preserved written, it's also preserved orally. And I think that's beautiful.
Alhamdulillah, I think we had a very beautiful conversation, productive one. We explored the root cause of Islamophobia, and we explored the solution to it, many solutions, many root causes of it. And I think you guys were the perfect guests to have, Hisham and Abdirahman. And I think that's it for this episode of the UmmahSpeaks podcast.